All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have to use my outside voice today because I don't have a microphone, but I'm still going to talk into it as if it's on. And I also just became a news anchor woman, so I am filling in for Chris O'Connell for Fox 29. So unfortunately, he's trying to make it. He's actually stuck in traffic. There's been a really terrible accident on 95. Maybe some of you've heard about that. So we're going to jump in since it's a little bit after 10. And again, welcome, and I'm thrilled to have everyone here today to talk about a really serious issue in our community. And welcome to the 10th Annual World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I definitely want to thank the Philadelphia Financial Exploitation Prevention Task Force for helping us put this together, and the Philadelphia Free Library. This is a great venue, and I'm sure you can all agree. And it's a really nice day today, so thanks again for coming. A special thank you to the Task Force Subcommittee, Dana Goldberg from Senior Law Center, Carrie Morgan, the Director of Financial Empowerment for the City of Philadelphia, and Jennifer Speary from the Philadelphia Corporation for Aging. So it's exciting to see so many people who are interested in this issue, but of course, I think I have to admit we'd rather not be here to talk about this issue. We don't want to think we live in a society where 1 in 9 seniors reports being abused in the past 12 months. It's a pretty sobering statistic. And we'd rather not have to acknowledge that this is only a fraction of those who are actually suffering at the hands of a predator. In fact, only 1 in 23 cases of abuse are actually reported. So even fewer cases of financial abuse are being reported, only 1 in 44. Sometimes people think that the impact of financial abuse is only lost money, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The impacts of senior financial abuse are devastating in many ways, and we have a caregiver here today to talk about her personal story to highlight that. For seniors, for their families, for the community, elder abuse victims are 4 times more likely to go into a nursing home. They are 3 times more likely to die. Elder abuse, even financial elder abuse, profoundly damages the physical and mental health of those we are supposed to protect. Their families also suffer the consequences, and the additional responsibilities they must take on to clean up the mess, the additional financial burden they may bear, and of course, the guilt of not being able to protect their loved ones from predators. Even the community as a whole suffers when one senior is abused. It's estimated by MetLife that the annual financial loss by elder victims to be more than $2.9 billion for reported cases. But remember, since only 1 in 44 cases are reported, the cost is really far greater. So these are dollars that seniors need to survive and communities need to thrive on. And so we're here today to hear from a panel of experts about how this problem can be solved in small ways and in large ways. First on deck, and I'm going to introduce the panelists that we have today and then turn it over, and each of them is going to talk about their area of expertise, and we're going to hear from our caregiver today. First on deck, we have Joe Snyder. He's the director of Philadelphia Corporation for Aging's Older Adult Protective Services Unit, where he administers the largest protective services unit for older adults in the state at the largest private area agency on aging in the country. Joe works on the local, state, and national level to create policy that prevents financial exploitation. He has also been a leader in engaging the banking community to create practical fraud prevention toolkits, works closely with the police and district attorney to bring justice to victims. And in response to this issue, Joe created the Philadelphia Financial Exploitation Prevention Task Force, today's hosts. I'm going to turn it over a minute to Joe, but wanted to give a brief introduction of our panel today. So Emily is a resident of King of Prussia and a lifelong entrepreneur starting her own business at the age of 17. Her life was changed when her mother became the victim of a predatory scheme. And she'll tell us how that impacted her mother and her own family. Ken Spade is the supervisory special agent at the Department of Homeland Security. His current group is responsible for investigating a wide variety of financial fraud violations, such as bank and wire fraud, international lottery and sweepstakes schemes, grandparent scams, check and money order fraud, and money laundering, just to name a few. Linda Johnson is the financial crimes investigator for TrueMark Financial Credit Union since 2015. She's also served on the International Association of Financial Crimes Investigators since 2002 and received an award for Member of the Year in 2006. She previously ran the Credit Union Fraud Task Force from 2005 until 2012. And part of her duties as a fraud investigator consists of handling cases of elder financial abuse and training branch employees on red flags to look for at the beginning stages of financial exploitation. Jason Karlowicz is a professor of medicine, medical ethics and health policy, and neurology at the University of Pennsylvania. He's the director of Penn's Neurodegenerative Disease Ethics and Policy Program, co-director of the Penn Memory Center, director of the Alzheimer's Disease Center's Outreach and Recruitment Corps, and director of CDC-funded Healthy Brain Initiative Center. His clinical practice focuses on the diagnosis and treatment of persons with Alzheimer's disease and related disorders. Dr. Karlowicz's research focuses on ethical and policy issues encountered in research and care that engages older adults with late-life cognitive disorders, such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease and cognitive aging. His current research includes understanding and addressing the ethical, psychological, and legal impacts of applying precision medicine to the brain, developing assessment tools for adult protective service investigators to assess client capacity to manage an imminent risk, and developing the concept of wealth care, which describes how a public health approach can promote both cognitive and financial well-being. And Dana Goldberg joined the Senior Law Center as staff attorney in 2012. Dana currently is the coordinator of Project SAFE, which stands for Stop Abuse and Financial Exploitation. She has a passion for advocating on behalf of seniors and empowering seniors to self-advocate for their rights. She provides direct representation in court for seniors seeking protection from abuse orders. And she litigates matters where seniors have been the subject of financial exploitation. And she represents and advises seniors who have experienced abuse in later life. Dana is a frequent public speaker. She also educates hundreds of seniors every year on issues relating to domestic violence, elder abuse, and elder financial exploitation. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe now to give us really an overview of what World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Krista. Again, thanks to the planning committee for this event, and especially to the Alzheimer's Association, who have done a great job in supporting us through this, and you guys are the best. Before we get started, I want to take a minute on behalf of our task force to send our thoughts and prayers out to the victims in Orlando and their families. How we became a country where we have a mass murder almost for the last 2 years every day is beyond me, and this acceptance of this violence is just too much to bear some days. And part of the issue is in what we do in elder abuse, it's something we've had to work with for a long time. In the same manner, in that, as Krista said, she gave you some statistics. There are 5 million victims of elder abuse in the United States, and as she said, hardly most of these aren't reported to us. And there's a couple of studies that say, she mentioned the $2.9 billion from MetLife. There's a study from TrueLink that says it cost us $36.48 billion a year, and financial institutions are losing $1 billion a year to financial exploitation of the elderly. So today we're here to celebrate the 10th anniversary of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. The first anniversary was 2006 at the United Nations in New York, and I was privileged to talk for the Adult Protective Service community to the World Health Organization at the United Nations about this great event. It was established by the International Association for the Prevention of Elder Abuse, and we hold events every year. In fact, there are events held throughout the United States every year. The national event will be tomorrow at the SEC in Washington, D.C. The purpose of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day is to promote knowledge and of this great problem around the world, to promote a better understanding of abuse and neglect, and by raising awareness of the cultural, social, economic, and demographic processes that make up this terrible problem. World Elder Abuse Awareness Day was part of the International Plan of Action acknowledging the significance of elder abuse as a public health and human rights issue. And again, The plan is to get communities together like we're doing today to raise the awareness about elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation. In Philadelphia, we partner with Wachovia Bank in the early 2000s to form at Philadelphia Corporation for the Aging, to form a fraud prevention program that became a national model for the Financial Services Roundtable. And it started in Philadelphia, spread to Pennsylvania, and then spread to the 13 states that Wachovia had offices and branches in, and that program was very successful. We saved $2.5 million from walking out the front door. We protected $62.5 million in assets, and over 3,000 cases were jointly investigated between Adult Protective Services and Wachovia Corporation. From that, my co-founder, Linda Mill, who then was the vice president of Wachovia, is now with Ally Bank, we approached the former Mayor Nutter's administration to talk about what we could do about this issue, and through Deputy Mayor Gillison, we put together a breakfast where Linda and I addressed this issue with the CEOs of the major financial institutions in the region. And that led the city to commit the DA and the police and Philadelphia Corporation for the Aging and two local banks that were TD and Beneficial. TD is no longer with us, but that's how we started, and it led to this great group we have today, and you can see the members' names on the program. So that led us to start this task force, and we've been working together ever since. And of course, we all know that the biggest benefit we have of working together is the relationships that we all form between each other, and makes it so much easier to jump through all the hoops that we have to jump through and all the blockages that we have naturally. The objectives of our task force are to enhance collaboration between our key agencies to prevent, detect, investigate, recover, and prosecute elder financial abuse, develop training to social workers, bankers, investment firms, and general community, and finally to develop and deliver an awareness and prevention campaign for seniors and the broader community. So the important thing is that we're here today, and this is, the most important people in the room today are you, because the only way we get this out is by you becoming engaged and becoming educated and bringing this out to everyone you know and working with us. You're going to hear today from a bunch of people, and we're going to highlight the risk factors, among other things, of what makes up elder financial abuse. And they're what you would think. It's isolation, it's physical impairment, it's ageism, and cognitive impairment. You'll be hearing from Jason, Dr. Karlowicz, and others about the role that the aging brain plays in the susceptibility to financial exploitation, both from a normal process and from a disease process. So we're really thrilled that you all are out here today. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day to come listen to us. And I'm really excited, especially, to have Emily Cardin with us today. Emily is a resident of King of Prussia, PA, and a lifelong entrepreneur, starting her own business at age 17. You didn't tell me that. Her life was changed when her mother became the victim of a predatory scheme. She'll tell us how that impacted her mother and her own family. So I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
First, I'd like to thank the Alzheimer's Association for having me here today. It's therapeutic. It's been a long time since this started, but it's still hard to talk about and hard to believe it happened. And also for everybody here that's working so hard to help people avoid these types of things happening to them. My mother was a victim of an internet dating scam that lasted years, causing her to lose her home and all of her savings. She has dementia now and doesn't remember having a home or savings and then losing everything, but it continues to have an effect on her life and mine. I'll get to that, why that is later, but first I'll tell you her story. My mother was born in 1943. She enjoyed her teens in the 50s, got married in her early 20s, had my sister and I, and then later got divorced in the 80s. She always hoped that she would find a new husband, and Being the smart, stylish, and beautiful woman that she was, it didn't seem like it would be hard for her to find someone new to spend the rest of her life with. Over the next 30 years, she dated, focused on her interior decorating business, moved from Philadelphia to Annapolis to upstate New York, and then settled in White Plains, a suburb of New York City. She had a good job with great pay and benefits, working for Stickley Furniture, and she was doing pretty well. Only she still hadn't found the right person to share her life with. Finally, when she was 65, that changed. She finally met the perfect guy on Match.com. His name was Richard, and he was a wealthy British businessman who owned a home in New York City. He was currently working in Africa because his company was building a new energy plant there. He was also a strong Christian, which was very important to my mom. He was romantic and sweet and not bad looking. He enjoyed doing Bible studies with her online and genuinely loved her. He told her when he got back to the States he wanted her to retire and marry him and never have another care in the world. He was perfect and he was everything she wanted. The only problem was that he wasn't real. It was a fake picture and a fake profile, and Richard was just a bunch of Nigerian guys over in Africa taking shifts in a small office, chatting with my mom online, pretending to be the man of her dreams while doing the same thing to countless others. She actually spoke to someone a few times on the phone who said he was Richard, so this helped to solidify him as a real person. She thought his accent was a little strange and also found it odd that she could hear chickens clucking in the background. But he was so sweet and perfect for her that it was easy to dismiss these things and focus on the strong feelings she was feeling for him and their future together. God had answered her prayers, and she knew that he was looking out for her and that she could trust that this was destiny. My mom was always protective of me when she was dating and never told me about anyone she was seeing until she knew it was serious. So she waited 3 to 4 months to tell me about him. At first, I was thrilled for her, but something seemed off. I can't remember what exactly it was that seemed strange to me, but something seemed too good to be true. My husband and I did a little research and, without too much effort, figured out his New York address was bogus and found his picture on multiple profiles. We showed her everything we could to help her understand that this was most likely not a real person. We pleaded with her for a month to take a step back and be careful. We showed her that all of the things he was saying to her was repeated by dozens of victims telling their stories in online forums. We asked her to at least be careful and not send any money, even if the amount seemed small at first, and also to wait until she actually could meet this person and see that he was real and that he was who he said he was. I warned her that a big sting was coming, and based on how these scams seemed to go, he was getting ready to tell her a tragic story and was going to ask for a large sum of money and a promise of more in return. She didn't believe any of this and quit her job because she knew she would be getting married soon, and Richard had told her she could afford to retire now and that he would take care of her. By the end of the following month, the tragic story showed up. He told her that he and his 12-year-old son had been in a horrible car accident and that his son had died. He said he was badly injured and he needed her to wire him $60,000 because his funds were tied up in government red tape, and if he didn't pay the hospital, he would be out in the street within a few days. He told her if she sent him this money, he would wire $1 million back to her as soon as his funds were available again. So she sent the money. Yeah. When she called to tell me what happened to him, my heart sank because I did everything I could to stop this train wreck, and none of it worked. My sister, my husband, and I had all put in so much time and effort to help her see this for what it was. How could she have been so brainwashed to not believe us? And the amount of money she sent was insane. Now I know that sadly it's not that uncommon, and this story continues to repeat itself with people all over the world. Months went by and she never got any money back, and then stopped hearing from him altogether. We thought she might finally accept that Richard wasn't a real person, but she couldn't. At some point during all of this, I called my local police department to ask them what could be done. They were kind and took time to talk to me, but explained that catching these guys would be impossible. And even if that were somehow possible, convicting them and getting my mother's money back was definitely impossible. Another person named Paul came on the scene a few months later, claiming to be Richard's cousin. He felt bad for her, and if she could send him money to pay detectives and bribe authorities, he could help her find Richard and get her money back. He also built a relationship with her, told her he was in love with her and that he wanted to marry her when he got back to New York. Over the next year, on her quest to recover her losses, she defaulted on her mortgage and was homeless and started moving around, staying with friends who would let her live with them little at a time. She borrowed money from everyone she could and probably sent most of it to this new guy in Africa. She wanted to move in with me, and I told her she could if she would give up this quest to get her money back and accept that this new love in her life was a fraud. But she wouldn't, and I couldn't bring that craziness into my home. I was raising 2 daughters and needed life to be normal. It was like dealing with an addict. So I lost touch with her for a while until she called me in early 2012 to let me know she had found a senior living apartment in Peekskill, New York for $300 a month and was doing well. This starts a new chapter. She never admitted that Richard or Paul were not real, but she also seemed to have let it go and was moving on, doing okay on her Social Security check, and she really liked her new town. I didn't feel the need to make her admit it or be right. I was just happy that she had landed on her feet and was doing okay. I started calling her every morning, and we talked every day for 15 to 30 minutes, and she seemed great. No scams in sight, and she was grounded again. She was living about 3 hours away from me, and when she wanted to visit us, she would rent a car for the weekend, drive to Philadelphia, and then drive home a few days later. However, she started to get lost coming and going, and it would take her at least 2 extra hours to get here and back. We started buying her train tickets to visit, but she would get very confused when switching trains, so this option was out too. So for visits, we would either drive to see her or hire someone to pick her up and bring her back. And this was working well. However, her memory kept getting worse. I convinced her to go to a doctor to get checked out. After the exam, she said the doctor told her she had dementia. However, she felt that he said it so rudely that she refused to accept his diagnosis. I told her she needed to take this seriously, and she told me that if I brought it up again, she would stop talking to me. I said, fine. We hung up, and after not hearing from her for a week, I decided to swallow my pride and call. I didn't bring it up anymore, and I continued to call her daily so I could check on her and make sure all was well. She continued to function well on her own, paying her bills, banking, grocery shopping, etc., but then, a year or so later, things took a turn for the worse. From our daily conversations, I picked up that she had gotten involved with Match.com again. I gently warned her to be careful and not develop relationships with people she couldn't safely meet, and confirmed they were who they said they were. Around this time, she also asked me to send her some money because she was behind on some bills. I had sent her money before that I know ended up being sent to these guys overseas, so I told her if she sent the bills to me, I would pay them, but she didn't want to do that and told me to forget it. It got really absurd when she told me one morning she won $12 million through a lottery that Warren Buffett was sponsoring. After pressing her for information, she admitted that she did have to send the organization money and a letter about what she would do with it if she won. When I tried to explain that it was a scam, she wouldn't believe me because, quote unquote, Warren Buffett is a good and reputable person. Why would he want to scam anyone? So at this point, I knew her logic skills were all but gone, and she needed to move back to Pennsylvania and be close to her family. Within a few days, I received a call from the Peekskill Police Department, a social worker, and the manager of her apartment building, all on the same day. Her bank manager was concerned and contacted the police to let them know that he felt she was in trouble and confused because she kept coming in and checking her balance and also kept withdrawing cash. The apartment manager said she was 3 months behind on her rent and was going to be evicted. The social worker came out to see her and felt she needed some supervision immediately. Her electric was also about to be shut off. I headed up to New York to try to figure out how to make this move and neutralize whatever was going on. Once I got there, I could see what was happening. I didn't realize how bad it was, but she was being bombarded constantly with emails and phone calls from foreigners promising her that she had won lotteries, cars, new homes, whatever, and all she had to do was send money, which she had been doing. The Western Union office confirmed she had been stopping in all the time and sending out money to other countries. Imagine the confusion and stress she was under trying to deal with everyday life on a tight budget, early symptoms of memory loss and dementia, and having pushy strangers calling her and emailing her all day with both promises of great things along with threatening orders. While I was there, one of the scammers called. I told him to stop calling and he brazenly started cursing at me and telling me to mind my own business. My mom heard the whole thing, but still believed him and not me. So I moved her back to Pennsylvania, got rid of her computer and any access she could have to one, and slowly got her acclimated to living here and having me manage all of her finances. Within 6 months, she stopped asking about her computer or getting a new one, and eventually forgot what a computer was altogether. It was a hard line to take, but the only way we were able to stop the madness was to get rid of her phone number, cut her off from the online community, and take over her money. This was an addiction for her, and she truly believed that the people she was being scammed by were her friends. It took a few months for her to settle in, but the end result was she was much safer and, believe it or not, a lot happier. We took away everything she had to worry about before, and she could now just relax and trust my husband and I to take care of all of her needs and expenses. In hindsight, maybe losing logic skills is an early stage of dementia and explains why she couldn't believe me or see the warnings. Maybe the stress of losing everything caused her dementia, as major stress is a known cause. Maybe it was just bad luck and an open heart and the willingness to believe in the goodness of people. You may hear this story and think you would never fall for something like this, and I really hope for your sake that you never become a victim of any variation of this scam. But it happens to smart people, young and old, every day. These people prey on your weaknesses. If you're on a dating site, they will look at your profile and create the person that you are looking for. In my mother's case, she was lonely and was convinced that God had the right person in mind for her. She has strong Christian values and was looking for someone with the same faith and interests. Specifically for my mother, they created Richard, who had all of the same interests and values, and somehow made it so she saw his perfect profile first and contacted him before he contacted her. It was a few months before any money was even asked for, so they were in it for the long game. They played on her emotions, kept her busy chatting online, and isolated her from friends and family. She wanted this so badly that her mind was able to defy any logical argument against it being real. People will prey on your fears and emotions while seeming like the sweetest, most trustworthy people you have ever met. Instead, please trust the people you have known all your lives. If it's time for them to step in and help you, don't be afraid to let them decide what's best for you and help you manage your life and money. Don't be so proud that you won't take advice from someone you've known all of your life and you know loves you. Be aware that if you lose all your money and your home, that not only does this hurt you and your independence, it becomes your children's burden as well to support you. My advice for seniors is to be aware that there will be attempts to scam you out of your money and belongings constantly. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how often. It will be on the computer, in person, on the phone, on a TV commercial, and any other medium that a scammer will dream up. These people are really smart. They know how to manipulate people, especially the lonely, desperate, and elderly, but also the strong, smart, and intelligent. As for caregivers and family members, I can't tell you that any of this knowledge will help. Some of you will have loved ones that will hear these things today and take them to heart with a healthy fear. Others will unfortunately be victims and will refuse to listen to reason. Please be gentle and understanding with them because you'll be older and more stubborn one day too. Whatever the case, our panelists here today have some great knowledge, advice, and solutions for how to work together on your own and with your loved ones to retain dignity and independence while knowing the signs and structure of a scam. Good luck out there, be smart and safe, and God bless.
Good morning. My name's Ken Spade. I'm a supervisory special agent with Homeland Security Investigations here in Philadelphia. You might wonder why Homeland Security would be involved in this sort of thing. Our agency, as the investigative arm for the Department of Homeland Security, investigates a wide variety of international crime, ranging from drug smuggling to money laundering to commercial fraud, counterfeiting, that sort of thing, and then in this financial fraud and that sort of thing. So the group that I supervised was one of the most recently formed group in the office, where not that we didn't investigate these crimes before, but we decided to consolidate them because of the volume of financial fraud that was going on in the world, in the Philadelphia area. We decided to put it under one roof and concentrate on these type of crimes, develop familiarity and expertise. And I'm here to tell you that Emily's story, although a very sad story, is more common than you might realize. It is not a one in a million type story. It's not an anomaly. It goes on every day, and we have dozens of cases open right now in Philadelphia alone investigating these type of scenarios. Emily's situation with her mom could be like an infomercial for what's out there and what to look out for, and variety of different scams and overlapping scams and cross-pollinated scams that these predators are targeting, seniors and every day and trying to get their money. So Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI as we're called, investigates numerous international and cross-border fraud schemes, such as phony investment pitches and business opportunities. And the scams are growing increasingly more sophisticated. And one of the reasons HSI is involved is because almost all of them are international in nexus. The ultimate recipient of the stolen funds is going to be in a foreign country somewhere. But they'll make a pitch. They with computers and other types of electronic devices available, they can disguise where they're making phone calls. They can disguise the source of their phone calls. So in the event that you've been made aware to watch out for calls coming from Jamaica or Nigeria or Russia, other such places where these scams are prevalent, they'll disguise and make it look like it's a local or a Washington, D.C. phone number that they're calling from to give some legitimacy, or Las Vegas, like that you might actually believe that you won a sweepstakes prize. So these perpetrators will victimize people of all ages. They're not very discerning. They're equal opportunity fraudsters. But the elderly are disproportionately targeted for a couple of reasons. One being that they take advantage of the fact that you might have cash reserves or other money available that they're actually able to spend on these deceptive offers. So a survey conducted in 2013 by the AARP found that 90% of respondents reported awareness of this type of consumer fraud. However, 2/3 of that group said that agreed that it was hard to spot, and an even larger amount said they found it difficult to report it or terminate it once they become victims of the fraud. So another survey indicated that the average amount lost on one of these fraud schemes is $70,000. So when you take into account that some people realize they're being defrauded after maybe $500, $1,000, $1,500 on the low end, there's some people that are losing a lot of money to get the average up to $70,000 per fraud victim. So a question you might ask is, well, how did they target Emily's mom? How do they target someone to just randomly call them on the phone? There's a variety of reasons. One, like Emily mentioned, they seek them out on different dating sites or Facebook or other internet, social media sites. Another thing is they acquire lists. They call them lead lists. They'll get them from Publishers Clearinghouse and other sorts of magazines or types of things where the lists are subscribers to, playing a lottery, games of chance, that sort of thing. So right away, they know the person is susceptible to being interested in the fact that they might have won a lottery scheme. And like Emily said as well, these people are in a room somewhere in a foreign country, like you see like on a telethon. They're just calling people. It's called the shotgun approach. They blast out in the hopes that they'll hit one person with all these pellets they're shooting out. And that's a good day for them. If they can get a little bit of money, and at least a little bit of money from somebody that's worth their while, for the people who don't fall for the scam and just hang up on them or aren't interested. So, and then it's like fishing. Once they sink the hook into somebody that they know has a lot of money and is interested, and they get a little bit of, they never ask for a lot of money up front because that's a red flag. So they'll ask for a little bit of money. They'll tell them that you won this money, this great prize. All you have to do is pay some customs fees or taxes or that, and then we'll send you the money. And once they pay a little bit, they say, it's just a little bit more. This is a different agency. That was the foreign government. This is the U.S. government now. We need some more money. Or today's your lucky day. While you were in the process of making your payments for this scheme, the person who had the larger prize above you failed to respond, and now you're eligible for that money. Except, of course, that's going to require a higher tax to pay because it's more money. And then they'll take that also and use it as pressure. Like, you have only till tomorrow to respond. You have to respond now. You have to, in order to hold your place to win this prize money, we need something right away. So they do that. They scare you into pressure. These people are professional salesmen. One of the things is, with all the outsourcing from U.S. countries or U.S. companies that have put their call service centers in foreign countries, these people are now being taught the art of customer service, the art of salesmanship, and they know how to talk to U.S. citizens, people in the United States. They know how to be nice to them, be polite, be courteous. They're articulate. So they use a variety of tactics, like I said, from salesmanship to pressure to just different types of fraudulent techniques. So another thing that fraud is going on is the scammers will impersonate a relative of the person they're calling. So the perpetrators can often find the names of loved ones, listed online in a social media profile, and they'll tell them, like, for example, they might claim to be a loved one and was arrested in Canada or the Dominican Republic or something. The grandparent, these are called grandparent scams. The grandparent may or may not be aware. It might even be something that they are aware of. It was posted on their social media profile, pictures of a grandson or granddaughter vacationing somewhere. So they'll call and say, I'm so-and-so, and I was arrested, or I had an accident in a foreign country. I need money right away. Please don't tell mom and dad. They think that they'll just think I'm irresponsible, and I really don't need the hassle. I don't want to go through all that. So if you could just Western Union money to me, at this I'll be able to pay my bail and get out of jail, or I'll be able to pay. They won't release me from the hospital. They won't continue to treat me unless I get this money. So that's something to be aware of that they will do. And a final thing, and it's the most egregious thing that we've seen since we've been dealing with these types of fraudsters, is they are now, it's an emerging trend involving the movement of illicit contraband by unsuspecting elderly citizens. So what they'll do is they'll use like Emily mentioned again, on a dating site or a romance scam. They'll elicit somebody's trust. They're in a foreign country, and can you come visit me? They'll actually pay for their tickets to come visit, and once they're there, they they'll unwittingly recruit the elderly person to move drugs from country to country, either under the guise of a gift. Can you bring this gift back to my friend in the United States, or could you take a side trip on your way back to the United States and bring this gift from South America to somewhere else, Europe, and they'll either disguise it in a gift, or sometimes they arrive and they say, "Oh my gosh, look, that luggage that you're traveling with is horrific. Let me give you some brand new luggage to travel with," and the drugs will be hidden inside the false walls on of the luggage. So to date, we've worked with some of our foreign country counterparts, and we've interdicted a total of 272 kilograms of methamphetamine, 209 kilograms of cocaine, 11 kilograms of heroin, and 15 people have been arrested overseas that are using U.S. citizens to do this, to move. Unfortunately, there's also some U.S. citizens that are in jail in foreign countries right now because they got caught doing this, and we're sorting through with the State Department and everything to work it out to show that they were unwitting victims in this. So in these, with these scenarios too, the average age of the couriers that we've identified so far was 59 years old, and the oldest one of these was 87 years old. So a few things to conclude with. Number one, don't be embarrassed that once you realize you got caught up in one of these schemes. Like I said, these people are professionals. They're very good at what they do, and very, young people and smart people. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but a football player from Notre Dame, Manti Te'o, got caught up in a scam where somebody was pretending to be. He actually referred to her as his girlfriend, but was in a foreign country and needed help. She was a cancer victim and all that. So here's a young man who's worldly. He's not, just hasn't led a sheltered life. He played football. He's playing college football at a major university, a top academic university, Notre Dame, and he got caught up in one of these scams where they have access to pictures on the internet. You can Google anything. You can Google, 20-something-year-old woman in hospital gown, and something will come up, and that's they portray that person as them, like Emily said with the Richard, a good-looking young man. We've seen people with models, professional football players, somebody not too famous, maybe a good-looking guy or a good-looking woman who's not very famous, but their pictures are out there, so they get them. They assume that identity as far as the picture goes, and they tell the person that they're scamming, that this is me. We had one where the guy, she said it had to be, the victim said it had to be true. The man's daughter was in an accident and had a broken arm or broken leg. He sent me a picture, and I said, pull up your computer right now. I'll be able to show you. You can get a dozen pictures of, black, white, Asian, teenage girl with cast on arm or cast on leg. It's all there. It's all at their fingertips. So, again, trust your family and your close friends. Like Emily said, don't trust somebody you just met on the phone or you just met on the internet recently. Trust, and as far as another thing, look out for your friends and neighbors or the person that you're taking care of, that you're a caregiver for, and look out for these scenarios and anomalies in their life. They had always consistently taken out, spent the same amount of money every week, every month. They would, if they're making unusually large withdrawals from the bank, or if they're now all of a sudden they're going to Western Union because they have to send money to some foreign country, and that's completely out of the norm. If they're taking a foreign trip to some country that is completely out of the ordinary for what their lifestyle is, or something that, where they've traveled to in the past, and that sort of thing, and they will take advantage. They're like they're electronic fortune tellers. They play off of what you tell them, and they all of a sudden make it look like they know stuff about you, that you told them without even realizing that you told them. And they will do things like, we have another case where the daughter of a victim stepped in and said, from now on, only communicate with me, and if my mother won prize winnings, you send it to me. And what do you think the scammer did? A couple of weeks went by, calls the victim, did you get your money? No, I did not. I sent $60,000 to your daughter, and now all of a sudden the daughter is public enemy number one, not the scammer. So, again, these aren't, unfortunately, we're here to tell you that this happens way more often than we would like to think. Again, there was so much of this out there that it resulted in the creation of a group to focus on, financial fraud and economic crime. And how I got involved with the task force was I heard Joe speak at a financial security officers group that I'm part of, and I said I'd like to be part of your task force and put a federal law enforcement presence behind it, because where we have offices in 46 countries around the world, so we can work to find the perpetrators of these scams, and we have our jurisdictional boundaries are greater and cross jurisdictional lines, like the Philadelphia Police. The Philadelphia Police do a great job on this. We work with them on cases. We work with bank security officers on cases. We work with all state and local law enforcement agencies. And what we try to do is we try to put a bigger case together, which will result in federal prosecution, and we can get more people and identify more victims and get the word out there to all of our offices across the country and across the world when we identify phone numbers, email addresses, types of scams, and that sort of thing. So, get a bigger picture presence. And within the last year, we had the first instance where we actually extradited somebody from Jamaica who was running one of these scams. Our office in Miami, Florida, got the person extradited out of Jamaica. That was historically a problem, that these people were nameless, faceless entities hiding in a foreign country, often with governments that don't think this is a big deal, or that we have difficulty through diplomatic channels working with them. So I thank you for your time and interest.
Hi, my name is Linda Johnson. I work as a fraud investigator for TrueMark Financial Credit Union, and I'm honored to be here. I actually took the day off to make sure I could make it here today, because I think this is a very important topic. Just to give you a little background on credit unions and banks, we're basically the same. Credit unions are not-for-profit, but we're regulated the same. We give out the same loans, we have the same accounts, everything is the same. And I have a lot of stories that I could share, such as Emily's. And, the first thing you're going to think is, oh, the idiots at the bank, why do they allow that to happen? And I'm here just to tell you that our problems in trying to help victims and what we are regulated by and the laws that we have to follow because of the Privacy Act and other regulations. So real quick, I just wanted to go through some of the groups that I belong to, which one is International Association of Financial Crime Investigators. Mike Cullen here, we have John from Citizens. They're very big in helping out with and working with people like Ken, and the two detectives from Philadelphia Police. Without them, our jobs would be extremely difficult, and we would not be able to help people as much as we can. And groups like with the PCA and the task force, it's very important that bank and law enforcement and caregivers, that we get together and we help each other. Because sometimes it's very difficult, like I said, when working in the bank as a fraud investigator. We have what's called the regulations we have to follow. So some of the problems that we run into is we also have a compliance officer. This is regulated by the government. Every bank and credit union has to have somebody in charge of compliance. And we take tests every year to make sure we're not allowed to give out information. We're not allowed to give this to anyone. If law enforcement contacts us, we need a subpoena. So with that being said, if you have an account with us and there's only one person on that account, as much as I see somebody coming in and withdrawing cash, I cannot call someone's family member and say, listen, could you really check into what's going on because we notice a difference in cash withdrawals, we notice this going on. I'm not allowed to do that. What we do is, and I'll go through some of the cases that we've had. So there's one individual, he's actually deceased now, but this happened a few years ago. And originally I was contacted by his daughter, who is actually a joint owner. Luckily, she's a joint owner on the account. And she said, my father had an account at a such and such bank, and they closed it out because he was doing transactions. They tried to get him to stop, and he wouldn't. So they had the account with us. His wife had died. It was actually a longtime girlfriend who had quite a significant amount of money and left the money to him. And he would visit this diner. And he would go to the diner and he met this waitress. And this waitress befriended him. And she would talk to him, and I guess they would go out, and she was significantly younger than him. She was about 40 years younger than him, which adds to this. And the daughter came to us and she said, I checked on this girl. I know her background. She was arrested previously in another state. I know she doesn't have good intentions towards my father. But every time I tried to talk to him, he doesn't want anything to do with her. And she was afraid of losing her relationship with her father. So I said, okay, well, I can help you. Well, I'll talk to your father. So he came in. She would come in sometimes, not all the time, but he would come in, and when he would withdraw, he started increasing cash withdrawals. It was a couple $100 every couple of days. And on our end, we don't want to act like we're trying to get into your business. It's none of my business what you do with your money. But, so this is where the line is kind of tough, because when we see a different transactions starting to happen, then we're going to question, we're going to ask you, because of these different scams going on. It's very difficult sometimes to approach that subject. So we had him come in, and we spoke to him, and, we had the branch manager, we usually have the member service representative speak with them, and we say, we just want to make sure, did anyone force you to come in here to withdraw this cash today? No, I'm fine. I said, did so-and-so, and I said, this woman, and she said, no, we're friends, I'm just helping her out. And I said, okay. So it continued for a while, and we can cause difficulties when you come into the branch. I mean, we can lower limits, we can talk to him every time he comes in, because from what we knew of this female, on our end, and the doctor can talk to more you about this, because we're not qualified to make a medical diagnosis at the branch. But when he would come in and we would talk to him, sometimes he would forget. And I had talked to him about this again, doing the transactions, and then a few days later, he didn't remember who I was. But that's not all necessarily a sign that, he doesn't know what he's doing with his money. So, to make a long story short, and then we had the daughter involved, and I had her contact law enforcement. And I said, I can't, you're his daughter, you're on the account, you can speak to whoever you would like because you have access to the account. He came in a few months later, he was in a cane, he was holding a cane, and I had taken video of him, because the other thing I can do is build a case and keep documentation, so that if something does arise, okay, and he decides that this woman's taking my money, then we have a case against her. So he had come in, he did not look good, he was using his cane, and the daughter contacted me again a few weeks later and said, oh, he's in the hospital. And apparently this woman started living with him, with her kid, and we found out later that she had opened some credit cards in his name that he didn't know about. So that at this point it's a crime, we can report a crime, but a few months later, he had a stroke, he was in the hospital, and he had died. And I just happened to find out a few months later when I was going through the account because I would check in with the daughter every once in a while. But we're stuck there, and we want to hold the money, and we want to say, no, this girl's not getting any of your money, this is what she's doing. But we're stuck at the bank. I can't just not give you your money. How is somebody's bills going to get paid? How is your electric, your rent going to get paid? And these are some of the problems that we have, because if we try to freeze the money, which we can't, but let's just say we did tell you that you're not getting any money, then how I don't know what bills you have. I don't know how your rent's going to get paid when we're stuck here. So the only other way we can handle it at the bank is report it as a crime, but then you would be the suspect. You would be the criminal, because there's no other way for us to do it. I can't just call Ken and say, hey, Ken, check out this bank statements and look at these withdrawals. This is what this girl's doing. I can't do that. And this is an instance where the daughter was on the account. She could do that, but she was so afraid that she would lose contact with her father, because she said, you know, I don't want to lose contact with him. I still want to be friends with him, because she would get angry. He would get angry that, you know, again, some of the problems is they feel like their loss of independence. He felt like she was trying to control him, and he felt, I can handle myself, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me. A second case I had was, it was a woman who had her own account. She didn't have any joint owners. And I have several instances where family members have called me. And in this instance, it was her daughter. And her daughter called and said, my mother met this guy on the internet, very the same as Emily's mother, and she wasn't very old, maybe early 60s. But I mean, she had no mental issues. There was nothing wrong with her. She was fine. She was on the internet, and this man approached her because she told me this. So the daughter called me and she said, we have spoken to my mother. We went on her Facebook account. We got the picture of the guy that she's been speaking with. We Googled him. We showed her the photo. It turned out to be some German folk singer. That this guy's picture, that's the picture he was using for his Facebook page. And she still doesn't believe us. What can we do? And she said, I don't want you to give my mother any money. And I said, I can't do that. I said, I can talk to your mother. And she said, I called the police, and the police have spoken to her. So her mother came into the branch, wanted to withdraw some money. The branch manager spoke to her. And our branches are trained what to look for. Every year we go through training, just on any kind of scam. We have people of all ages that are scammed. And we try to, we tell them what questions to ask. We try to give them information. So the manager sat down with her, and she said, oh, it's this guy I met, and he needs some money. He's a millionaire, and he lives in New York, but he's working on an oil rig.
Is his name Richard?
I didn't write down his name, but I forget, but it was very similar to that. And this is what they do. Now, by the time the large withdrawals start coming in, they have already spoken to these people for a few months. And I don't always get the full story because they don't always want to tell us the true story. So I learned stuff from Ken, and I learned stuff from police and other institutions, and we try to share stories so we can try to find out, how do we stop, what do we have to say to these people to stop sending money? And she came into the branch to withdraw cash. The branch manager sat down with her. I said, show her. We have documents from the Federal Trade Commission. I I started using Dr. Phil's website. He's had quite a few shows on this. And anything that I can give them, I give them. The Consumer Protection Bureau has documents. AARP had a good article a few months ago. And we sit down and we show them the documentation. We pull up the websites. And she said, I'm fine. I know him. He's telling me the truth. This isn't a scam. So she withdrew her money. The daughter calls me again and tells me what's going on the other side. And then I had the mother call me, tell me, my daughter, is she calling you? And I said, yeah, she did call me, but I can't tell her any of what you're doing or what you're doing with your account or anything. And the daughter got to the point where she went through her mother's computer. They shut down her phone. They tried to shut down her internet, her and the son. The mother did not believe the daughters. They did not. There's so many cases where the family members always turn into the enemy. And the daughter got to the point where she told her mother that she was not going to let her see her grandkids anymore. And then our member called me and starts crying, saying, she doesn't know what she's saying. She doesn't want me to see my grandkids because of this guy. And I said, well, because they care about you. I have people that I've dealt with that don't have any family members. You should be glad that you have a daughter and a son that care this much about you. But she still did not want to believe that this guy was not telling the truth. And then her daughter would call me and say, what can I do? And I said, well, call Ken. So the mother came in the branch again. We called the police. We had the police come in to talk to her. So we've had the daughter called the police. The police have gone to her house. The police have come to the branch to talk to her. We had the branch manager. I spoke to her. Her family spoke to her, and she still did not want to stop sending this guy money. Eventually, she said, you know what, I'm closing my account out, and I haven't heard from her since. I don't know any updates on that, but she did not want to stop speaking with this guy. And she told me, she said, I'm lonely, and this guy makes me feel good when I talk to him, and I don't care about the money. And I said, but, you have many years left. What if this guy was telling you, what if this guy was real? What if this guy was a guy that you really were going to meet and you were going to date, and he's asking you for all this money? I told her I would dump him. I said, you're not going to pay this guy all this money, even if he was real. You don't want him. I mean, you get to the point where I don't know what else to say. So, on that case, we had family members available. Had another case with another male whose two daughters. Another guy whose wife died. He would go to this diner, and he met a waitress, and she would be his friend, and she was quite younger. She had a couple kids. It starts out with, she would give him the ATM card, and we would see purchases, and then they were a little suspicious, so we would call and verify. He would say, oh, no, I didn't do that. But then we would give him another card, and the same thing would happen. And then the daughters get involved, and they come to the branch, and they tell us the whole story, because they investigated this girl. She's taken money from my father. He gave her a credit card. He paid her child support. And now I tell the family members, I can't stop him from taking money out. If he wants to come in and withdraw all his money in cash, we have to allow him to do that. Because we're stuck. So that's what we try to do. And it's great when we have family members, because then we can have them call the police and they can do whatever they want. They're the family members. But as far as the financial institution, I can't just call up and say, what we can do is have the police go to your house and visit you to make sure you're not being threatened. We've done that because there's been instances that I've heard of that they've actually sent people, and these are dealing with the wire fraud, they send people to their house, and they become friends with them, and they bring them presents and stuff. So we want to make sure that our members aren't being threatened and nobody's forcing them to come to do any withdrawals. We can do that. But as far as contacting family members, I can't just call a family member and say, hey, your father's been in here taking out half his life savings. You might want to check into this. And like I said, by the time it comes to that, these people have been talking on the phone for months. And I forget the name of the article, I think in ARP is Are You Real? You might be able to find it on the internet. And it's actually written, they interviewed one of the scam artists. And he told them how he trains people how to talk to people on the internet, what to say. They'll use religion, they'll use kids. This woman whose daughter wanted to stop him from taking her money actually had kids get on the phone and pretend to be his grandkids that he was taking care of. And this is another guy in a foreign country. They were his grandkids that he was taking care of because his wife died, and they give you a sob story about, you're so wonderful, and how all this terrible stuff has happened to them, and it's so wonderful I met you, and I mean they will stop at nothing to con people. I mean, these are professional con artists. And to have children on the phone, I mean, how many people wouldn't believe that they was telling the truth if he has kids get on the phone and talk to you like you're eventually going to be their grandmother? I mean, that's what these people did. So, back to my other mail, I mean, eventually the two daughters went to court and were appointed guardianship, but by that time, I mean, savings dwindled quite a bit. And the father was getting mad, thinking that the daughters were just worried about the money, and it's not that. It's when you're standing by watching someone take something that took your whole life to save, it's very difficult. I mean, even the branch people and our representatives, I mean, you go home thinking about this. Like, how can I if I was watching somebody get robbed on the street, I'd call the cops and say, this is what they look like, this is what they're doing, this is where they went. But when it comes to the bank, I got to sit there and just let it happen unless I have a reason to report a crime, which I can't just call the police on everyone that's taking out their money. And some of the problems we run into after I speak with our members is they're afraid of losing their independence, so they don't want to ask for help because they're afraid their kids are going to take them and stick them in a nursing home, and they're not going to be able to do anything on their own. They're embarrassed. I mean, these are only some of the cases that we've seen, but there's probably plenty of them that we're not even made aware of because maybe a family member or someone else did intervene. The family members, they become the enemies, and they always these con artists try to make your family members your enemy. And the same thing with when Ken said about them sending money to the daughter and her stealing the money. This man that our one member was talking to tried to play that off. Like the daughter was just jealous. The daughter was going to try and take her money, and she couldn't tell the daughter anything, and played this woman against her daughter. So again, she left, and I don't know. I haven't heard anything on updates on her either. I had another guy years ago. For lottery scams, the way it starts off, some of them, is they'll start asking for small donations, which I've noticed, $10, $15, $20, and you write checks out to these different charities maybe. Some of them are fake charities. And you start asking for these small dollar amounts. And what happened was, our member thought he was playing contests too. So it's similar to Publishers Clearinghouse. They'll use names, but they'll make them up. And they'll make it sound like Publishers Clearinghouse, but they change the words around. So he would write out checks. So he won a laptop, which he told me. He said, these people that I'm playing the lottery, they told me I won. I just have to send money for taxes and fees. And he said, I won a laptop. And I said, did you get a laptop? He said, yeah, they sent it to me. And I said, okay, well, that would be if you're making thousands of dollars, why not buy a laptop and ship it off? And then you get their confidence that, hey, wait, I can win, and these people are legitimate. And he started to come in. Again, it started with the small checks. Then he started increasing the cash. And a lot of our members we know, and our branch people know. And they know what their regular activity is. They know what their regular routine is. And he started to come in and withdraw a little bit more cash than normal. So the branch manager had talked with him. The assistant manager spoke with him. And a lot of times, the victims tell us, oh, you're right. You know what? I believe you. And they tell us, they listen to us. But then it just continues. So, again, this person didn't have anybody on their account to call. So we had the police. We called them again. Can you talk to him? You know, we want to make sure no one's forcing him to do this. We want to make sure he's not a victim. I mean, this is what we think's going on. So the police will talk to him. The police can contact a family member. So that's the one thing we have. And they can, you know, hey, do you have any family members we can speak with? Some of the family members just don't do anything. They don't care. I mean, I've had that instance too. Where you try to the family members just like, they want nothing to do with anything. They don't help. And, you know, you try to explain to them, I can't do anything. If he wants to come in and take his money out, I have to let him take his money out. And so then when they catch on, the con artists realize that we're catching on to what they're doing. They'll change it up and tell them, okay, this is what I want you to do. And they'll send them locations, Walmart, Western Union. If anybody asks you to wire money through Western Union, that's more than likely a scam too, because they know the banks. When you wire money out of a bank, we're going to verify the money and where it came from. So they'll start telling them to go to Western Union. They'll tell them to go to Walmart, buy Green Dot prepaid cards. This is another scam. You buy the Green Dot card for low dollar amounts, say $200 to $500. Then they have these people call the person up and they give them the card number and then the digits on the back. So when you give that information to these people, now that card is theirs. They can use it on the internet to buy stuff. So there is actually no cash transaction taking place, but they're hiding it and they're preventing other people from seeing how this money is being transferred out of the country. So that's another way they're doing it. And real quick, a lot of people, I've spoken to females who had said, well, they're calling me from a local number. I don't know if anybody heard of spoofing. You can spoof your number, your phone number. I can call a company and have my number show up any way I want it. I can have it show up as a name of a company if I want. There's companies that do that. So just because you see on your caller ID a phone number and it looks like it's from 215, they can change that and it's not going to show up as 215 area code. So these people have a lot of ways to fraud you and to pretend they're someone that they're not. They can use voice over companies where they're talking to this computer and then it sounds different on the other end. And I only have a few minutes left, but that was just basically some of the issues I just wanted to get by. That, you know, it's when you see these stories on the news, and how could the bank let them do that? Well, we can't just stop people from taking your money out, and it's important that we're allowed to help people more, because right now it's like our hands are tied with what we can do to prevent somebody from coming in and taking their whole life savings out, even though it kills me to sit there and I just want to go down to the branch and just say, you're not doing this withdrawal. Take me to your house. I want to talk to these people. So that's about it, but I think I've gone through everything. I have time.
Thank you so much, Linda. In the interest of time, and I just want to take a natural break here because I am happy to report that our actual Emmy Award-winning reporter, Chris O'Connell from Fox 29, is here, despite having had to be in Orlando, unfortunately, on assignment, running into a major accident on 95, running out of gas. He still made it here with very little sleep, so thank you for that. So I want to bring him up and then continue on with the rest of our panelists, Jason Karlowicz and Dana Goldberg, to talk about resources and also issues related to cognition, which are two really important topics as well. So welcome, Chris. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, folks. I appreciate it. Thanks to the task force and the Alzheimer's Association for having me. Very important topic for me, as well as Fox 29 as an organization. And forgive me again, I was late today. I was in Orlando last night. Unfortunately, covering the shootings down there, which we had some local victims. One of them is actually a Fox 29 intern. I spent some time with her in the hospital last night, so she's doing well. I'm sure you probably all saw her on the news. They asked me to stay in Orlando last night, but I said I wanted to be here today because I thought it was important. Because, as Linda was saying, every day, literally every day on the news, we're doing a story on the vulnerable getting scammed one way or another. There's old scams, there's new scams to old scams, and it goes from lotteries to family members, unfortunately. It has hit my family. When I was asked to do this, two stories came to mind, and one of them was my great aunt. It was my father's aunt, who we took care of for years, and we put her in a assisted living facility, one of the best in the area. And turns out that she was a victim. We paid a lot of money to have her in there, and we visited her daily, twice daily, and didn't know for months that she had things stolen from her, her wedding ring, her cash. And we didn't know for a long time. And that was many years ago. Also, my wife, her grandfather, World War II vet. When I first met him, he had some incredible stories about his time. He was a truck driver in World War II. And I was fascinated to hear some of his stories. Of course, over the years, those stories started getting more vague, and he started forgetting those stories. He had dementia, Alzheimer's. And he was another victim, and this was a family member who he trusted. He, like many in that generation, he only kept cash, lots of it. And his life savings was depleted because of a family member he trusted, the rest of the family trusted, but didn't really know. So those kinds of things, I mean, I'm sure everyone in here has a story like that. So what do you do? How do you recognize the signs? How can you prevent this? And that's why we're all here today. And someone who can kind of help us with that and figure out the signs on a cognitive level is Dr. Jason Karlowicz, who can kind of tell us why these scams happen, why we fall victim to these, and how we can kind of prevent it. So in the interest of time, I do want to keep this going, so I'll introduce Dr. Jason Karlowicz.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the Alzheimer's Association for helping this all come together, and also want to thank Jennifer Speary from Philadelphia Corporation on Aging for leading the organization of this event, and the task force that Joe and others and I'm a member of. I'm from the Penn Memory Center at the University of Pennsylvania, and I should point out we have a table over there staffed by my coordinator for diversity and research and education, Tigis Taylor, over there. Tigis, and our summer intern, Anna, is with her as well. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about a very difficult topic. I don't pretend to have the answers, but if I had to give you an overall message to get to an answer, it's the way things are structured now is not the way it needs to be. And there are going to need to be some substantial changes in the approach that we take to preserving our cognitive health and our wealth in order to prevent having these disasters happen. And so lots of changes need to happen. And the good news I want to report is that the system has begun to wake up and change is coming. I want to thank Ms. Cardin for sharing her story. Her courage to tell such a candid and vivid story is really commendable. And it's so important that people overcome the, frankly, shame and embarrassment that they have when they themselves have that story. until we get those kind of narratives out, we're not going to change the system. So I am a physician. I work at the Penn Memory Center. I see patients once a week. And this is not an uncommon problem that is part of the chief complaint, the reason why someone has come in, that there's been errors made with financial transactions, either by the individual or that they have been abused, taken advantage of, as we've heard so vividly today. And it makes sense that often that's part of the reason why they're showing up, because when you think about it, of all the activities that we engage in on a day-to-day basis, one of the most cognitively demanding of those activities is the management of our money. It taps into a lot of our higher cortical function, and therefore, if we're beginning to lose cognitive function, we're going to see it show up in these more demanding, cognitively demanding day-to-day activities, managing money, making decisions about money, financial matters. And so in some sense, I could say that the banking and financial services industries are really kind of on the front line of screening for cognitive problems in America. They didn't go into that business thinking that that's what they were going to do. They didn't go to med school, nursing school to do that, but that's really what they're doing. They're doing that. And they know that, and they're beginning to wake up and recognize that. What happens with an aging brain? In brief, we've heard the word Alzheimer's mentioned several times, and there's no question that one of the common reasons why an aging brain begins to have trouble managing money is because it's beginning to develop signs and symptoms of the disease. And one of the more common diseases, as people enter their 7th, 8th, and 9th decades, are neurodegenerative diseases, which just means neurons are dying. And one of the more common diseases that causes that is Alzheimer's disease. But that's not the only disease that can cause a brain not to function well. There are other diseases like Parkinson's disease, etc. But disease isn't the only issue here. Decades of careful study of cognition over time in people who lack any disease show that not only humans but other mammals have changes in cognitive ability after, in the case of humans, after about our 5th decade of life. And what we see after about the 5th decade of life is even in individuals who don't have disease, don't have Alzheimer's, don't have Parkinson's, what we see are changes in some certain cognitive abilities. One thing we see is that a decline in what's called our fluid intelligence, our ability to take in and process and think through new information and reach a judgment, particularly novel information. Not all older adults experience a decline in their fluid intelligence. It's not a uniform finding, but if you look at them as a group and follow them over time, you'll see that on average there's a decline in fluid intelligence. Some preserve it fairly well, and some have rather notable declines in fluid intelligence. No disease is at work as we currently understand disease in the brain. This is, quote, part of aging, and yet it's a real phenomenon. So it's like one thing we're going to probably have to work through is to get over the fact that it's, quote, normal aging, and therefore, quote, we shouldn't do anything about it. Because if you're having troubles making decisions because your fluid intelligence isn't as good as it used to be, that's a problem. I don't care whether I can't bill for it or not because it's not a disease label. So that's going to be a cultural, social shift we have to make. The other thing that happens with aging, we have diseases, we have changes in cognition independent of disease. There's a third thing that happens with aging is we see changes in how we process emotions with aging. It's a fascinating phenomenon, but as people enter their later decades, so we see changes in the way emotions are processed. Actually, it translates into a very interesting phenomenon. It is not the case that with aging, older adults are more unhappy or more anxious. It's a popular myth that's often stated. But multiple studies show over time that as people age, as they add years to life, they actually become happier. Scores on measures of depression and anxiety as a group are lower than the anxious younger adults fretting about their future and what to do. You want to go find anxiety? Come to Penn's campus, hang out with the undergrads. You want to find contentment? Go to the retirement communities nearby and find people who have adjusted to and come to terms with and are very much focused more on the present and the positive emotions that they would seek in the present. There are some fascinating studies, for example, with aging, that show cognitively normal older adults preferentially remember positive things over negative things. That is to say, if you show them images of positive things, puppies, bunnies, flowers, and negative things, bugs on pizza, crying babies, and then ask them later, tell me the pictures I showed you, they'll preferentially remember the bunnies and the babies and the flowers, and they will actually be more likely to not remember the bugs on the pizza and the other ugly images. There's something about the aging brain that probably is adaptive, which is I'm focused on the present and I'm enjoying the present. And so you put all those things together, the incipient changes from Alzheimer's that might be going on, the changes in fluid intelligence that are occurring, and then these changes in social and emotional processing, and you can see why an enterprising crook would target the older adult and say there's money to be had. Joe has always educated me on this. There's always been bank robbers. They've just found new ways to rob the banks. They're not so likely now to go and stick up the banks anymore. Those days are over, right? There still are bank robbers. Now they're going after the customers. You're the victims of the bank robbers. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we could frame this as a criminal problem. And I bet you by the time you leave here today, it's, you see this as a criminal problem. But I give you a warning. Look at our drug policy in their country. If you purely frame these issues as a cop and robber issue, you get what we've got, which is a messed up drug policy, for example. I think what you need to do is you need to see this problem as a public health problem. It's not just a biomedical problem that I and my colleagues need to figure out better drugs and better diagnostics, and we'll pill our way out of this. It's a problem about a brain, in an environment, in a family, in a community, in a banking and financial system that was built for an earlier time of buyer beware, and this is just normal aging, and these things happen, and things weren't very connected. And we have to rethink at the level of the individual and the family, the use of technology in the community and by the banking system and the financial system, the laws and regulations that require reporting, holding on transactions, the laws and regulations for fiduciary obligations on the part of people who are taking care of people's money. And we could rejigger a system that recognizes that it's about maintaining our health and our wealth, or as I like to say, our wealth care, W-H-E-A-L-T-H. Our health and our wealth are really tied together. And that's a new model, a new way of thinking. And the good news is that when Joe and myself and Jennifer and whatnot sit down with the firms, they get it. They totally get this. They get that the future bank and firm is not the bank and firm of today. That they need to be better integrated into not just the wealth, but the health of their clients. They need to, frankly, start figuring out ways to talk with the Penn Memory Center before it's too late. I would invite you, if you go to the Penn Memory website, which is pennadc.org, pennadc.org. On the front of the homepage of there is a link to a conference we recently had on financial security with aging. And you click into that, and there are several talks by folks from regulatory, banking, financial services, advocacy groups around this problem. Links to some other articles that develop it. So I feel your frustration. I mourn what happened to your mom, but I look forward that in the next decades we will see a different world where it's part of our care will be our wealth care, and we'll better recognize that our brains are integrated into our finances and vice versa. And it'll be a new and different system, and not one just for the wealthy either, actually. It's even more important that this problem is addressed for those who got just enough savings to make it and a check coming in to keep things going, for whom a loss could really be a disaster. And a disaster not only for them and their family, but for society, because the tragedy of this all is, of course, among many, is that you can't go back and earn it back. It's all very well to take your risks at 30, 40, 50, but at some point you enter into not accumulation but decumulation, and then that creates, I think, a social responsibility to take care of those and set up a system that recognizes the vulnerability of those who are no longer accumulating wealth but now are decumulating it. So thanks, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm medicine, now comes the law.
All right, everyone's still awake out there? Yeah, okay. My name is Dana Goldberg. I'm an attorney with the Senior Law Center, and I specialize in elder abuse and financial exploitation. And I too thank the Alzheimer's Association and the members of the task force for having all of us here today. And my job is to talk to you about what resources there are out there, because everyone's probably thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What kind of world are we living in? And I do want to remind you that, as many bad people as there are out there and perpetrators, there are also a lot of good things out there. And we do have options, and we have options as individuals, and we have options as a community. What we're talking about here is this intersection between independence, and I'm going to embarrass my mother because she is here today. And I have an argument with my parents and with my mother-in-law all the time about the fact that, we are independent, we're adults, we make our decisions, and I want that. I want that for each and every person, okay, to be able to do that. But the fact is that there are times when we all need help. We all need other eyes. We all need another perspective, okay? And that's the part that I think we have to change, just like Jason was talking about. We have to change this cultural idea that we're in it and we're only in it for ourselves and we're not going to tell anybody what's going on. So, how do we do that? First of all, each and every person, caregiver, senior, even the younger people that are here, you need to get your affairs in order. What do I mean by that? You need to decide, am I going to write a power of attorney? Am I going to be the person to make a decision that if I get in a situation where I can't speak for myself, I've made the decision who that person is going to make the decisions and go ahead and take care of my healthcare decisions and my financial decisions. Many, many people that I talk to are like, Ms. Goldberg, I am not doing that because if I do that, I will die tomorrow. Well, I wrote mine many, many years ago when I left my children with my mother over there, and I am still here, people. So I did not die the day after I wrote my documents. And why do I say that? Because although we've been focusing a lot on stranger scams and internet scams, the majority of the perpetrators in this country are people that are known to the victim. They may be a caregiver, they may be a family member. And lest you think that these are just, big, bad male wolves, you should know that the majority, I think 80% of the perpetrators are women. Okay? This is $1 billion problem. It's an epidemic in our country. We need to be watching out for ourselves. If you have somebody and you've named an agent under your power of attorney, you're better protected legally. Because then it can come into court, they can be held responsible, they have legal duties. You go and you put somebody on your bank account, guess what? They can come in your bank account, they can take all that money, and there's not anything you can do about it, and there's not anything I can do about it. You made them a legal owner, and they could take all of those funds. So, what am I suggesting to you? I'm suggesting that you do what you're doing today. You go out and you educate yourselves, okay? There's those of us at the Senior Law Center. We're a group of lawyers. We're a nonprofit legal institution that offers our services free of charge. We run a helpline for any senior over the age of 60 in Pennsylvania to get answers to legal questions free of charge. Yes, I did say that as a lawyer. I want you to talk to your doctors. I want you to ask questions. When the doctor says, your loved one suffers from mild cognitive impairment, I want you to ask the doctor, what do you mean by that? Is it really mild? Does it stop there? Does it get worse? Should I be concerned about their making decisions? And I want you to speak up if things don't seem right. Also, for the caregivers in the room, I want you to get your affairs in order, okay? What happens to you if you haven't written your documents? who's going to make decisions for you, and the fact that you're in charge of somebody else as well. There's a lot of stress for caregivers, and they are vulnerable because of that stress. I have many people who say, I just couldn't look at another bill, Dana. I couldn't open another piece of mail. You know, he was getting worse, and I just felt like I was in a whirlpool and I couldn't manage. And oftentimes, those are the times when the perpetrators come out, okay? It's that family member who knows you've been at the hospital every day or at the assisted living every day. You're not looking at your mail, you're not paying attention to your bills, and suddenly that money's gone. Okay? But you're not alone. We are all here to let you know that we are here. We have a table over there, Senior Law Center. Many of the other task force members have tables here. And we have come together because we are a resource and we rely on each other. And we want you to contact us so that we can get you in touch with the resources you need. The other thing is, lots of times, it's not easy to talk to family members. And many people are fortunate enough to have people that, good families that are supportive. But sometimes you don't want to be able to talk to them about something shameful or embarrassing. But sometimes you can talk to me. Or you can talk to somebody from another agency in a confidential setting to say, guess what? I made a mistake. I trusted somebody. I did send money by Western Union. And I'm not going to sit there on the phone and say, you did what? No. You don't need that. What you need is, what can you do now? Can we get the money back? Can we protect what you have now? What are your options? If you wait till it's too late, people, then you're in a situation where the court may have to get involved and you no longer have a say over your own affairs. And then you're no longer independent. You're reliant on somebody else, choosing often somebody not in your own family who never knew you to make decisions about your life and your money. So, I'm charging you at the end of the program today to go get all this information, and in addition to being participants today, you're our ambassadors. Take this information, take it out, take it to your religious groups, take it to your community groups, take it to your apartment buildings, take it wherever, and encourage people to speak up, to call, and then let me also say, this is one venue. We can come out, we can talk to other groups. The more that we inform, the more we empower each other as a community, the more we can fight this epidemic. Thank you.